talking about sex,
Yes.
you know, I was watching your story and I'm like, oh my gosh, you've got lots going on here. You are also, would you describe, like, are you also a sex worker? Is that like, eh, is that a,
I mean,
multi,
technically, yes. Technically,
yeah,
yes, I am. You know what I'm saying?
okay.
I
You
don't
have a
go as
page?
hard as a lot of people do, but yes, I have an OnlyFans,
Okay,
and
okay. Yeah.
I make a pretty good living from it, and I mean, that's like the last thing I ever thought that I would do. Um, so you know,
Why?
what I mean, it's not that I was like against it personally. Like I will never do this. Like it wasn't like that.
Hmm.
It just wasn't on my radar. You know what I'm saying? Like it just wasn't something that I anticipated. Um,
Okay.
and I started doing it because I really needed the money, so I kind of like got into it out of desperation. It ended up, for me, it ended up working um, not just because my operation is decent and people like my content, but also like it doesn't really interfere with my career path. Which for a lot
I like that. I dig that.
and
Not
a
that,
lot
I
of people it
mean,
could interfere. So
it could. And then people have to make that decision for themselves, right? And so, I
yeah,
mean, because there's so much stigma. And so, I mean, you know, look, it is in general sex work. I mean, sex work in some form is the oldest profession, they say. So it's definitely prostitution.
definitely one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and so there is, there has been so much stigma about it. Um, do you think that there is as much, there was way more, I think there was way more stigma 20 years ago, but now that we have this sort of tools to have like an OnlyFans page, which is different than having to go on the street and actually meet clients in person. Um, do you see, I'm curious, like, do you see, what is your thought about those two things next to each other, both being sex work, one being the ability to sell sex for, you know, for people on like a web page or like, you know, OnlyFans remotely, where you don't necessarily have to physically interact with people that you don't want to. It means that you are at less risk for like things you don't want to be at risk at. Some people like STIs, physical violence, things like that, especially for women and femme providers, you know, professionals.
Mm.
That is, but for everyone, those things are an issue for sure. What is what are your thoughts about like your connection to the sex work community? Like, are those two different communities that like don't have any connection, or in your experience, do you see a solidarity with the street worker?
I mean, I think that it would be kind of silly to pretend like we're not all part of the same community. You know, like
Mm-hmm.
if you take your clothes off, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
It's all the same. You know, obviously there's different levels of it, but if you're taking your clothes off for money, then I think that it makes sense to lump yourself in the same group in terms of um just a category. Now obviously if you're actually like an escort and you're actually sleeping with people, I mean I think that there's so much opportunity to legalize that, so that it can be safer for people who do want to participate in it. That would help to knock down STI rates. It would help to minimize violence, and also to just minimize the stigma of the service itself, because
Mm-hmm.
use it. I mean, like all types of people, hire escorts, particularly, like if you're not if you're not somebody who just is overloaded with sexual options, sometimes what else are you gonna do? You know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't speak negatively to your character. It's just, people want to have sex. So I think that there's and part of what I will be fighting for going forward is to further legalize sex working.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think that when it comes to the online stuff, I think that that has played a tremendous role in helping to destigmatize the idea of
Mm-hmm.
things like stripping and sex work. I do think that we should be careful, and a lot of this can just come from things like sex education. I do think that we should be mindful of the fact that platforms like OnlyFans and Fansly primarily are, it's mostly men spending money on that. And like, you got very young women who can get sucked into this. So, if you're 18, 19 years old, or even in your early 20s, you know, you think you know everything, but you don't. and you're not necessarily thinking about the repercussions of how this could impact your professional career, your dating life, things like that.
Mhm.
I think that we should have respect for it in a sense of this isn't something you should necessarily pursue if you have other options. You know, like if
Mhm.
this isn't something you really need to do, or it's not something you're just generally really interested in, which most people aren't, you know, then I think that there's a bit of a danger of treating it like, oh, it's just like working at McDonald's because it's not.
Mm.
But
Mm.
but I think that if we can have some respect around there, then I mean, hey, what's wrong with it?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. I think it's like any other tool, you want to make sure that you're using it well, like, like a knife or a hot stove. Like there can be harm associated with it if you're not really knowledgeable and
Yeah.
forward thinking. There was friends of mine, I have I mean, being in the trans community, there's lots of, because we just literally coming out of a moment in time where like it was legal to fire us for being trans. We didn't get that nationally protection until 2019, and so damn, just like
Like
damn during the
5 seconds
pandemic
ago.
when nobody had a job, you couldn't go out and get a damn job. Anyway, and so many of the girls that I know uh, are or were sex workers, and to varying degrees, a lot of them not necessarily online because, well, that's a different story. But like, I think there's something about a certain experience. What the point is, not online. And a lot of the girls that I know, especially back in the day, would talk about like, wanting to not having any other options because they couldn't go work at McDonald's. Like McDonald's was like just not trying to hire. And so I agree that like people should, you know, make sure that this is something that they think through, because not that it's shameful in any way, shape, or form, but other people there is a stigma that exists and other people may treat it as such. What are some of the misconceptions people have? Like you kind of spoke on it a little bit, but what are some of the misconceptions people have if they find out, like let's say they're not aware of your page, and that
Yeah.
you like, and then they find out and they're like, oh, well, I bet you did it. Like, what are some of the misconceptions?
About me or about like the work itself?
They work in general, not necessarily you. No, yeah.
I think that I mean, there's some misconceptions that that you like it is work, you know, like you have to do it. You have to, you know, if it's content, well, you know, if you work at a strip club, you gotta go shake your ass. You know what I'm saying? You gotta go do it. If you got a OnlyFans page, you have to be consistent. You have to interact with your subscribers. And I think that a lot of people they don't realize that you, what you're doing and why people are there. You know, so a lot of people will like start it and then they'll be like super offended that people want to see all this sexual stuff. But that's why you're there. You know what I mean? That's why you're there. So you know, you can't have your cake and eat it too in that regard. Like you can't, like people aren't really, now people absolutely can and will disrespect you with some of the stuff they say, but for the most part, you know, people aren't disrespecting you because they want to see you do this or want to see you do that. You know, like this is some of how they support your work and support your brand.
Mhm.
So don't, you know, like don't give them an attitude. Like that's, you know, like I've seen a lot of people do that, particularly men who work in this
Mhm.
space who may not realize that the overwhelming majority of your subscribers are going to be
Are
gay
men.
men.
Are they gay men? That's who they want to look at.
Because that's who spends the money. You know what I'm saying? I mean, well, you know, at the end of the day, sure, you know, like women do partake in that, but like not the same way that men do overall. You know what I'm saying? So like, but other than that, you know, I think that you know, like if you want to be a teacher or something, I think it makes sense why that may be an issue for your career because you know your students and parents don't necessarily need to be thinking about you naked. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I
so
mean,
I
they
think,
already do.
yeah, I mean,
They don't need proof.
yeah, but I'm just saying, I think it's important, at least for me, for people to be fair about it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, if you're gonna do this, then like it's you know like if you run into some issues, like it's not always because society is tripping. Sometimes people ain't tripping and you made your choice. You know what I'm saying? So I think that, you know, we can continue to destigmatize it. But I think that, you know, people who get into it, you just got to realize that, hey, man, people there to see some freak shit. So you got to give it to them. And I happen to be a freak. You know what I'm saying? So
Mhm.
there's no
Oh,
issue for me. You know what I
so it's
mean?
more than just feet.
Oh yeah, it's
on
more
the
than
page.
just. Oh yeah, you can see everything on the page.
I don't know, but I'm just saying. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know yet. Maybe I'll take a look.
Hey, you know what I'm saying? I'm the one who put it out there. You feel me?
Hey,
But yeah, no. At this point, I have a lot. I have a lot. I mean, I have thousands of butt naked pictures out there. So, but you got if you're cool with that, then you know it could be some decent money. But you're not gonna make like a lot of the like OnlyFans. They'll push stuff like, oh, this woman's making millions of dollars. Like, one, you probably won't make that much, and two, you don't have to make that much money. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you can make, most people don't make barely anything doing it, but if you can make like 1,000 plus extra a month doing it, we grown, we got shit to pay for, you know? So, I'm not a fan.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just real quick. I'm not a fan of people like Bonnie Blue and Lily Phillips, who like like
Is it?
1,000 men in a day, like that.
Oh, I just watched the video on you. Not just watched, but like a few months ago.